Welcome to the session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Aliyeva Gaukhar, and today I'm delighted to be representing Equals, the global partnership for gender equality in the digital age. And I'm excited to be having a discussion about tech and tech careers with Kate Wilson, CEO of Digital Impact Alliance, who has committed the past 26 years to bringing diverse stakeholders together to find common ground in business, technology, and policy, holding leadership roles in both the corporate and nonprofit sectors around the world. Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech, being recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2021. Girls in ICT Day is an international day marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. In 2020, Girls in ICT Day was the 23rd of April. The objectives of Girls in ICT Day are to help to create a global environment that empowers and encourages girls and young women to consider studies and careers in the growing field of information and communication technologies. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, UNICC, and in support of Equals, the global partnership for gender equality in the digital age. The goals of the series include to interest and inspire girls and younger women with information about a range of ICT careers that can be had, to bring before a broader audience some of the role model women in tech and share information about their career journeys and work. We also want to offer diverse examples of how ICT is being used to support achievement of sustainable development goals and other United Nations goals. We also want to showcase initiatives that are working with girls to support them in ICT studies or future ICT careers. We also finally want to provide girls and young women in tech with a leadership opportunity to represent and promote girls in tech organization within which they are involved and promoted to be a broader international audience. Now I'm delighted to shift to a conversation with Kate. I was very looking forward to it. So my first question is, when and how did you get into technology? What made you interested in it?
I started in the technology field in 1998. I was doing an MBA at the University of Michigan, and my primary focus up until that point in time had been actually work in Southeast Asia. And so I had worked with a number of companies who were investing deeply in Southeast Asia, and we were working quite closely on sort of opening up trade ties and then also finding Southeast Asian companies and helping them with sort of their trade and business interests in the US. So around that time, I thought I really would like to go work very specifically in Southeast Asia. And so I started my MBA and a master's in Southeast Asian studies. As part of that, I worked in Southeast Asia. And that was about the time that the financial crisis was hitting Southeast Asia. And I was looking for sort of a new focus functionally besides sort of trade and investment. And so I started looking around, and technology was growing quite a bit at the time. And I had the opportunity to go to a summer internship actually during my MBA at Microsoft. And so during the course of that summer, I realized that a lot of the things that I was really passionate about in terms of equality and finding ways in which people could actually touch one another actually was really going to be achieved most closely through information technology. So I really learned on the ground by being recruited back to Microsoft and then going there as a full-time employee.
Yeah, and what was your path from, because now your work is mostly around social impact and, reducing the digital divide, and it's quite different to, for example, your work experience in Microsoft, and how did you make this sort of transition from more commercial to non-for-profit projects working on them?
So I have this basic theory that job satisfaction is kind of the who, the what, and the why. And I really believed in, and by that, I guess I should say that the who is really, do you really like the people you work with? Functionally, do you love what you do, and are you good, and are you being stretched at it? And then the why is, do you actually believe in sort of the end goal of what it's doing? So on the who and the what, I was great, right? I really loved the people I worked with at Microsoft. I functionally loved what I was doing. It was a good fit with my sort of background and experience, and I was really enjoying the work. But at that time, I was working in video games, and I had been there for about 8 years. And I was really struggling with that as sort of the main focus of what my work was. And because so much of my work in Southeast Asia had been with sort of developing economies and kind of watching them grow, and that was really sort of my passion. At the time, that wasn't a big focus for Microsoft, although that's changed dramatically since. There really was a strong interest, and there's a pretty large global health sector in Seattle, Washington, where I live. And so that intersection came together. And so I thought, I really would like to learn a lot more about international development and specifically global health. And so I ended up transitioning through serendipity and a lot of persistence, working with a number of people there, was able to apply sort of functional skills that I had to come over in sort of a strategic planning and business development role at PATH, which is a global health nonprofit. Well, there, we had the opportunity, as digital technology was starting to become more used in development, had the opportunity to co-found a digital health solutions team with a colleague who also had serendipitously come from Microsoft. And so we built that team over the course of a number of years. So that's sort of the intersection. Everybody's always like, it doesn't make any sense, but it was like, it's sort of each experience has taught me something or brought something to me that has enabled that depth. And what the work at Microsoft really made possible was actually this deep understanding of what it takes to build a product, how much work goes into evaluating new market entry, what are some of the drivers. But there was never a time at Microsoft that people weren't solely focused on the customer and actually doing right by the customer. And that I feel like is very shared with development, although it's often not perceived that the private sector feels that way. But I can attest the fact that customer centricity was at the focus and heart of everything we did every day.
Was sort of at that initial of your period, were there any milestones that you would set to yourself, like, oh, at this period I need to do this project in order to overcome or achieve something? Were you going for the skills that you want to develop, or it was mostly you were going with the things that would, I don't know, your mentor would give you, or like something would happen and you would
Mhm.
decide to go for it? Was it something you always knew what you want to do, or it was something that unexpectedly sometimes?
So I would say, like many people, up until the age of maybe up until a certain age, you have this deep certainty that you can chart and control your entire life. And so I was one of those people who went to business school with the perfect plan. I was going to do my MBA, my master's in Southeast Asian studies. I was going to go and work for, a consulting firm based in Southeast Asian studies. And I was going to go and live and work in Asia. And a number of things during that time working in Asia actually taught me was you really have zero control over a lot of things in life, including like when a Southeast Asian currency crisis hits, or major changes in terms of structural reforms. And this year during the COVID-19 pandemic has probably taught everybody that a lot more. So I would say that I take a few things to heart. One is that I have an idea of what I do care about and certain principles by which I live, and the type of structures and jobs that I'm willing to accept or not do. The second is that I do try and set and evaluate sort of on 18-month cycles. Like, how am I doing against those sort of internal goals? And for me, they're really driven by that sort of who, what, and why, and that passion for doing the who, what, and why. The third thing I would say is that I look at kind of uh, the whole picture of success. So success should not just be what do you do in terms of your job, but success is in terms of what you want in your life, what you want from your family, how you can best support, your family and those that you care about. And so it's a internal and external and work-life balance that I think I try and strive for. And so I evaluate those on pretty 18-month cycles and then live against those values if I can, as best I can.
And along this way, you would definitely encounter any challenges. And how did you overcome these challenges? And what were those challenges meant to you?
I think that challenge is an inherent part of living.
Mhm.
And so you are going to face daily small challenges and daily large challenges, from changing in funding cycles to changes in leadership and management to global pandemics that reshape everything that you thought you were going to do. So as an example of that, this year we, in March, or late February, really early March, saw what was changing and how much it was going to affect sort of funding cycles. And so we reoriented all of our work, or roughly 60% of our work, to really demonstrate how digital technology and responsible data use could be used specifically for COVID-19 response. Now, we are not specifically a health group, but we do have technology that can be deployed. And so we looked at what was happening in the external environment and said, how can we help? Now, to do that requires a couple of things. One, requires that you are aware of what else is going on around you. Two, that we are really thinking carefully about how our work can always be applied to best support the people we care about reaching. And so that goes back to sort of living those values. And three, that we move as rapidly as we can to sort of adjust and apply what we know to make that happen. And so that requires sort of operational changes. So I would say that the way that we sort of, that while that's a very specific case, that those principles basically apply in most situations, which is, a true evaluation of what's taking place and what is the challenge and how large is it. Two is sort of, being able to make up your mind about how you're going to address it. And you're going to be wrong half the time, but you just have to accept that. And three is sort of then moving relatively quickly to sort of to take a step forward, and then you live with the consequences and then sort of learn from what happened. And half the time you're going to mess it up, and half the time it's probably going to work out.
Thank you. And can I ask you, can you share with us any project recently, considering the current situation, that you were able to do or you're mostly proud of at the moment? Or like anything that you would like to share about the work that Digital Impact Alliance do?
I will point out probably three examples quickly. One is that one of the core aspects that Dial has been focused on over the last 4 years is how to unlock the routine use of mobile network operator data for decision making. So working in a number of countries, including Malawi, Tanzania, Mozambique, and others, we're working and bringing together multiple partnerships to try and both identify what were the common questions that governments have, help get access, working with the regulators and with the telcos to actually bring in and use data analytics to answer those questions. And three, start to see them employed. And so in the case of Malawi, as an example, they've been using those health data insights. We had this infrastructure set up even before COVID struck. They were able to quickly use and move to use it rapidly when in March. So that was able to give them sort of a very valuable tool. The second is we are the stewards for the principles for digital development. And I really want to cite that because it's actually embedded across over 233 development organizations. And those 9 living principles really help guide the way people think about it. So keep the user at the center of what you do. Think about how you're going to safely and responsibly use data. Actually, reuse technology that already exists instead of inventing new. And so we feel like those 9 principles help embed our sector's entire approach to things. And last but not least, we're really looking at how we can support many countries on their digital transformation and responsible data use. So moving forward, we're going to be spending a lot more time actually working directly with country governments as they kind of grapple with those changes and seeing how best we can, help them marshal financial resources, technical resources, and help them on that journey. And much of that will be tied and is tied to the critical nature of what they have to do about transferring over and really using digital technology and responsible data all the time as COVID-19 has changed the structure of their economies.
And can you tell us more about working in the emerging market? What kind of challenges do you face, and what do you think we can do in order to actually help them more? Because it's important now more than ever to assist and bring it, since a lot of, for example, students don't have, I don't know, enough equipment to do online education, or like, I don't know, report about the COVID cases. What do you think we can do, and what needs to be done in order to improve the situation?
So that's a great question. I mean, I guess I'd start with sort of going back to those principles and values. I mean, fundamentally, I think that people are more the same than we are different.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of approach this with a very basic understanding that there are leaders around the world, all of whom
Mm-hmm.
are on a journey for digital technology and digital transformation, and no one has the answer, right? No developed economy has it, no emerging market economy has it. We're all sort of living through this together at the same time. So I don't think of it as how to help emerging economies, as I think of it more along the lines of we all need to figure out what this digital transformation path is.
Mm-hmm.
That said, a number of countries have less resources than those in higher GDP per capita. So what we then look at is how do you, what are the resource constraints that they have as they chart their digital transformation journey, and then how do we help shore up some of those resource constraints. Sometimes it's financial, and people usually talk about the money, but often it's have they had the experience of trying X, Y, and Z. But we do have a very firm belief that countries have more to learn generally from one another than they do from sort of Western experts coming in. And so much of what we feel like our job is to do is to listen to what problems they have, kind of scan the environment and see who else has had similar challenges, be able to kind of document what some of those challenges are and bring them some of those lessons or best practices and then connect them directly with those countries and then help enable that sort of collaborative journey between countries.
Seen this series about girls and women in technology, and for example, what advice would you give to this girl?
I, I think I go back to sort of, you asked a question earlier, which I didn't fully answer, which was around on the skills. And so I actually think you have to understand the technology in order to have the conversation. May not be so much around girls, it's as much as it is around sort of development. A lot of people are passionate about global development, but not and what digital technology and responsible data use can do, but they are not necessarily well steeped in how the technology is constructed, what are its limitations, what are its aspects, and how best to grow it. So I think my first advice would be, start and really understand the technology and then keep up with the technology along the way. The second thing that I would then say is that don't limit yourself based on, what you perceive or, attitudes about you because of your gender, your race, your sexual preference or sexual orientation, that these are real prejudices that obviously exist in the world. But I to me, I think most people limit themselves because of limitations they place on themselves before other people put a limitation on them. So I think it's sort of build the right skills and have a multi-sector view. So understand the technology first, but then also understand how it applies in development, and don't assume that the lessons in one are necessarily always the same as the lessons in the other. I learned that deeply. And then the second is, the most rate limiting thing that can happen to you is actually yourself. And so I encourage people really to, um, you know, not limit themselves artificially. There are few barriers you can't smash if you try hard enough.
That's such a great advice. And what do you think? Do you think is it the best time to learn new skills considering this period? What do you think are the areas that are actually the skills are in demand or the human resources in demand and that needs more, I don't know, diversity and skills? What do you think are the areas would you recommend also to focus on?
So I think I heard two questions. Is it a good time, and which skills to learn? So I think it's always a good time to learn new skills. I mean, I'm constantly learning new skills. So I don't think you ever should look at your life as like, this is my period to learn and then I'm done, right? Like life is kind of a continuous learning journey, and then you really evolve and grow from there. So yes, it's a great time. It's probably, more people are at home, other things, right? It's better than some others, but it's something that's probably important to build into your life every day. What skills to learn? I think it's really going back to that 18-month cycle and sort of an evaluation of what you have, right? So when I first went into tech and started at Microsoft, I came from a strong policy background, developing economy background, a fair amount of political philosophy and sort of behavior change at government level, but I really didn't understand the tech. So then I spent a lot of time understanding the tech. And then after many cycles there, and then a lot of it on business development and sort of strategic planning. And so that was that time to learn that. And then when I switched over to global health, it was, how does this apply to development? And how do the two intersect? And so I think everyone just has to look at, what are the jobs you're trying for, and then look at each successive role or each successive training as, how does this round out a broader skill set? So often when I talk to colleagues or employees, I'll ask them not what's the next job you want, but what's the job after that? So that you're looking at the next job to build the skills for the job you most want after that point in time. And so you're really looking at, how do you round out a set of complementary skill sets? And some people just want to get infinitely better at one very specific specialty. I tend to be more of a good generalist. And so I try and go deep in specific things and then put them together into one. But that's kind of the way I approach skills development.
What excites you about the next step in technology? What areas do you find you're mostly passionate about, and you would like to discover more and learn more about it?
So interestingly, and usually I would always address this, like the geek in me would address it as here's the 16 things that I'm interested in personally around um, uh, advancements in artificial intelligence, or changes in terms of how we use algorithms. But I'm actually not going to answer that. I'm actually most interested right now in an innovation that is completely different than what we talk about around products, and that is really business model innovation. And so how might we pool financing, particularly in development, to actually you know bring the right market, the right market dynamics into bear in order to make sure that digital technology can actually be used effectively in the developing world. So I'm sort of excited on the business model innovation side. The second thing that I think I'm most excited about is just making the process for what we call institutionalizing digital technology easier in the process of development. So like what are the um, policy changes, the pricing changes, the human dynamics changes that actually make digital technology easier for people to use? Because
Mhm.
as much as all of us work with it each day, um, I'm sure you could cite 30 different things that happened yesterday that sort of frustrated you about the way your system was set up. And so I'm more looking at how do we drive some of the inefficiencies and challenges out of the use of digital technology. I'm as excited about that as I am about what's the next new thing, because I think that constantly pushing for the next new thing sort of ignores the fact that we still have a lot to do to actually just make it more usable.
I can imagine how busy you are and how do you balance, how do you keep that work balance? Do you have any activities beyond the job that you do that you could tell us about?
Walking slash aspiring to run. I've just taken up paddleboarding, yoga, and walking and cooking and mostly just spending time with my family.
Oh, that's great. And on a final note, what maybe some other final words that you would tell to someone who is, I don't know, not very confident in actually trying to learn about technology? Because as I said, we all have this prejudice of, oh, this might be too complicated, or I'm not be good enough or smart enough to try the things. So, what would be your, oh, this is not always not the best time, and what would be your like final advice?
It's actually something I'm talking a lot to my children about right now. So they're sort of, sometimes get defeated or feel that they are can't face what is happening. And the thing that I say to them is, no one ever accomplished anything by not trying. So you
Mhm.
could fail, but really, what's the worst thing in the world that happens if you fail or somebody laughs at you? That is hardly the end of the world. Simply, take one step forward, try, you know, be able to, laugh at yourself when you make mistakes, and pick yourself up and learn from them and just keep going. Because nothing ever changes unless we put in the effort. And so to me, it is less about, um, being perfect or assuming that I'm ever going to be perfect or anyone else is ever going to be perfect, but really the effort and attempt and actually just putting in the work to get there and then getting
Oh,
better. You do have to get better. Don't make the
that,
same mistakes twice. Might be my. You can always make mistakes, but don't make the same mistakes twice.
hopefully, that's such a wonderful advice, and thank you for finding the time for the interview. That's a wrap for our session today for Talking Tech. And again, thank you so much for finding the time. And I really enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, thanks so much to our viewers for watching.
Thanks and have a wonderful day.